two favorite things in fiction are gunslinging and swashbuckling. And you got to have a sword to swashbuckle. So this book imparts both of those in an absolutely phenomenal way.
And I think that's what I like about men's adventure fiction at its best, is that it always makes me want to be just a better version of who I am now. And like the one, it builds me up. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. It's episode 2. I'm super excited, super thrilled to be back with Nathaniel Hummel. And it's been wild being able to connect with everybody after that first episode. So thank you to everybody who watched that, right? For giving your time to watching that, first off, and then commenting book recommendations, DMing about different guest recommendations. It's been awesome building this community, and it was beyond my expectations how fast we would be able to connect with you guys, and that was the goal. Is we just want to connect with other readers and fans of this genre. And I encourage you guys to connect with each other, find each other on Instagram, make friends in the comments, because this community of men's adventure fiction, of fans, I think we kind of agree that this genre is more than just entertainment on the page. It's kind of a philosophy, a way of life, and we can all help each other become not better readers alone, but better people, better men, and strive to be like the heroes we're reading about. So I thank you all for connecting and building this community with us. We appreciate you. And I'm going to throw the intro now over to Nathaniel Hummel, who's going to tell us the topic for today.
Yeah, I can't agree more with what you were saying about. I think I even texted you, just the responses that we got to the first episode were so awesome. Yeah. The fact that we probably 6 or 7 people suggested short stories or books for us to check out, and that's what it's all about. I literally love this genre so much, so having other people speak into that and give me more stuff to read and just to talk about, my DMs have been filled up with people just talking back and forth about men's adventure fiction. That's literally the whole point of this. So keep it coming. If you're enjoying the content, definitely let us know, because I'm doing this because I get to talk with Luke for 45 minutes to an hour about men's adventure fiction. I would do this all the time. It's what it's all about. So I'm really excited to do it, which jumps us into what this whole episode is going to be about. And since we have been talking so much about this specific books, specific characters, I decided that I wanted to know what Luke's top 5 favorite stories are, favorite books. And I just texted him that, and he was like, dude, this would be a great idea for the podcast. So here we are. So we're going to I think we're going to split this into 2 parts. This week we're going to do 5, 4, and 3. And then next week we'll do 2 and 1 to really figure out what it is we love. I'm super excited. I love talking about my favorite books and my favorite stories, and I'm super excited to hear what Luke has to say for himself. So,
this is going to be exciting. And speaking of the community aspect, let's see your guys' top 5 too, because more book recommendations. Make me more poor. Make me buy all the books and not have any money left over, because that's what it's all about. It's getting these good book recommendations. Who's starting this off, my man? Who's going first?
I can start.
All right, go for it. What do you got?
All right, let's roll in. I got to pull up my list here. All right, in the number 5 spot, I've got Riley's Luck by Louis L'Amour.
Nice, dude. Got to start with Louis. I love that.
Got to start with Louis. Spoiler alert, this isn't the only place he's going to appear in my top 5, so I'll throw that out there. But this book is, I don't know if formative is the right word, but it was one of the early ones that I read. I remember I first found out about Louis L'Amour because my dad and mom would always take us up to Maine once a year in the summer, and we would stay with a family friend, and they were older, and they had this awesome property in Maine. They probably had 100 acres plus, and it was just, there was a stream that ran through a bunch of rocks and boulders, and we would just have the best time ever. I remember one year we went up there in May, and there was still snow on the ground, and we just had the absolute best time. But he was a huge fan of Westerns, so he was actually the guy who said, like, have you ever heard of Louis L'Amour? I had never heard of him. I was probably, I want to say, like 10 to 12 at the time.
Whoa.
And he gave me my first Louis L'Amour book, and I remember
That's awesome.
it was right when I had really gotten into Westerns, so it was just the stars aligned. From, I think, every summer after that, I would wear like cowboy boots and flannel shirts and carry a cap gun around because I wanted to be a cowboy so bad. This was not that book, but I remember, I think I was at a Goodwill or something, and I saw it, and the cover is sick. I don't know if you can, it's hard to tell with the glare, but it's a couple guys sitting at a card table playing poker. And I really like this book because it's almost a two-parter. So the first part is about Riley, and he ends up taking care of this kid, and he is responsible for him. So Riley's a gambler, and he was the one that really stuck with me. It's such a cool character. I don't remember exactly how it happens, but he ends up getting stuck with this like 5-year-old kid, and one of the first things he teaches him is, he's like, if you're ever going to start a fight, or if you ever see that a fight needs to happen, the first thing you need to do is strike hard and first and as fast as you can, because hopefully you can take him out with one punch and end it as quickly as possible. And so Riley and the kid just go on these crazy adventures all over the place, and they end up heading even across the ocean. So it is set in like the 1880s, but they go over to Italy because Riley follows where the gambling streak's taken him, and it's just an awesome story. And then it kind of like shifts gears into more of a revenge story. So highly recommend it. I think it's one of Louis', like a longer one of his books, but I love it, man. So that would be my first one.
Yeah, can't go wrong with Louis. And a couple things struck me when you said that. The reason I got such a reaction when you said you were like 10 is, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if we've talked about this, I didn't know about Louis L'Amour until I was, I want to say 23-ish, 24, so wow. A few years ago, because of, have you ever seen the movie Peanut Butter Falcon?
Yeah, it's Shia LaBeouf, and yeah, that's a good movie.
Shia LaBeouf, it's a good movie, and in that he's like, he makes this line, this passing comment where he's like, "Oh, we're living the adventure like Huck Finn or Louis L'Amour," and I was like, "Who's Louis L'Amour?" And so I like wrote it down on my phone, like in the theater. Bad theater guest. Took my phone out, like wrote down Louis L'Amour, and I went and looked him up, and the first thing that came up was Education of a Wandering Man, funnily enough, and I was like, "Oh, interesting." Put it on the back burner, and then around 2019, 2020 is like when I actually dove into Louis. So I'm like technically a new Louis guy, but I've read so much and become so obsessed with him in the past 4 years that I feel like I've been reading him forever. But yeah, to know that you've been reading him since 10 is really cool. I'll probably pick your brain a lot to see what it was like as a young man reading them.
Dude, that guy can turn a story like no one else.
Yeah.
That's what I think his book, the back of the book, I always remember it said like America's foremost storyteller. And that's exactly what it is. When you read a Louis L'Amour book, you feel like you're sitting around the campfire with your grandpa, and he's telling you like
100%.
Something that's about his own life. It's so good. It's just, and that's something that I want to kind of emulate with my own stories. When people read something that I wrote or watch something that I made, I want them to feel like they have a personal connection with me, like I'm actually the one giving them the story, instead of it being this kind of like, I don't know, far off, something that is kind of ethereal and not really attainable, but it's like man to man, someone's telling me a story. That's what I really love that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a very astute reader, because that's Louis L'Amour's like whole goal. Is he said, I come from like the oral tradition. I want to be that voice around the campfire. So it's interesting that came through to you. That's awesome. And that is like what you're saying. You pick up any Louis L'Amour, you're at least gonna have a great story at the very least. Like, you're gonna have fun. But what I love about his stuff even more is that every single story has like a life lesson that just hits me so hard, and that like I think about and I keep with me, and it makes me really want to strive to be better. And I think that's what I like about men's adventure fiction at its best, is that it always makes me want to be just a better version of who I am now, and like it builds me up, which is awesome. Yeah, Louis does that better than anybody. Well, awesome number 5.
another thing that I was thinking about when you said that. Have you read any of the Sackett books yet?
Yeah, I've read a few. Not all, because there's a ton.
Yeah, dude, there's so many Sackett books. What he does so good in those is like you're in the story, but he also takes time to paint this picture of like how good life can be out and outside. And he also gives like little, like you said, life lessons that are thrown in there. And there's so many things in his books that are like quotable. Like you could just hold that in your back pocket. And what I really loved about Vipers and Red Rocks was you did that a bunch of times too, which is really what made that like the modern Western connect with the Louis L'Amour thing. There's like 5 or 6 quotes from that book that I'm sure are going to show up on my Instagram feed in the next year or so, because I'm going to use them as captions for my posts because they're just so good. They're like such good quotes. It's awesome. So good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is something that Louis does better than anybody, is those nice quotes that just stick with you. So I appreciate that compliment a lot.
All right, what's your number 5, dude? Let's see it.
Guys, I'm feeling a little bit insecure about this because 2 of my top 5 are not technically men's adventure fiction, so bear with me because they get to the spirit of it. I'm going to make an argument for that. But this first one is technically not even fiction. It's a memoir, but it's A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. And it's his time writing as a young man in Paris. And just as a writer, it connects with me and is inspiring in that sense to just see Ernest Hemingway. And there's a lot of not life lessons, writing lessons in there as a writer. If you get his book on writing, a lot of the quotes come from Movable Feast. But the men's adventure fiction aspect, and what I want to kind of touch on for this list and this conversation, is Ernest Hemingway. When I'm reading A Movable Feast or Death in the Afternoon, or I forget the one about Africa, but his memoirs of going to different places and just seeing him live, it reminds me about the importance of building a life on experience and not just on platitudes or ideas or even philosophies. Like, that's all good to cultivate, and as readers we do a lot of sitting and thinking and contemplating and underlining and really thinking about stuff. But Ernest Hemingway, he went out there and lived really hard, and it's so inspiring when I'm reading Movable Feast and I'm seeing him travel off and meet new people and just live. It makes me want to do that. And I have this heart condition, and they told me heart failure and liver failure is inevitable, so I always had that in the back of my mind. And that's what I want to I want to live the best I can, the most I can right now. And so I think Movable Feast hit me in such a hard, long-lasting way that it's made it to my top 5, just because of being a writer and getting that inspiration, and just on a personal level of how he lived, inspiring me to go out there and build a life on experience. And I think if anybody picks that up, they'll not only have a fun time because it's written sort of like a novel. It's very funny. It's exciting. It's just a fun, light read, but it's got an underlying tone of do not let your life pass by, and I love that. Yeah, dude,
I have not read that, but on your suggestion, I definitely am going to pick it up. I think that 100% that's men's adventure fiction. I mean, it's not fiction.
Kicked out of the club.
It's men's adventure. I mean, who is more adventurous than Ernest Hemingway?
Right,
he's literally he's a man of action, and I think that's what the whole heart of men's adventure fiction is about, is being men of action. So great choice.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. I was like, am I going to get kicked out immediately on episode 2?
No, dude, you somehow surpassed. You're now even higher in the club of men adventure fiction because of that one.
All right, what's your number 4, man? Let's go into it. Thank you.
All right. This list was super hard for me to make because a lot of my favorite books are in book series.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And that's tough. And it's tough because when you have a character that you get to know over 15, 20, 30 books, it's not necessarily just one single adventure that sticks out to you. You love the character, not necessarily specific stories. But that being said, this one is The Ambushers by Donald Hamilton. Now, I don't know if you've read any of Donald Hamilton, but he wrote Matt Helm. And Matt Helm he's like the American answer to James Bond, and he's tougher and grittier, and the stories are a little more realistic, but they're still like crazy. But they are so good, dude. The first one's called The Death of a Citizen, and Matt Helm is just an absolute badass. So I think he's like 6'4", and he's always described as being a beanpole, and he was a fighter in World War II, and he ended up getting selected to be part of like the OSS type of situation. So he was doing a lot of like undercover stuff. And then flash forward 15, 20 years, he lives in New Mexico, and he's a photographer and fiction writer, and he actually writes westerns for the pulps, which is pretty sick. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a former flame from his time when he was a secret agent comes back into his life, and she pulls him completely out of his life, and it's just absolutely hectic and crazy. And that one's a really good book, but it is not my favorite because it's kind of like riding the line between like a spy novel and then more of just like a slice of life. Like all of a sudden this dude gets thrust into the middle of an adventure. But after that, he ends up going back into the spy business full time. And the stories are just so good, and they keep getting better. But The Ambushers is awesome. So it starts out with him being hired out to a company in a country in Central America where he has to assassinate a dictator. So it starts out with him like trekking through the jungle with a bunch of guerrilla fighters with a big sniper rifle, and he gets up on top and he snipes the dude, but in the middle of sniping him, he sees another guy who looks very familiar, and he realizes it's because he knew him from when he was fighting against the Nazis in Germany. So super, like, big deal Nazi guy is on the loose in Central America, and he then finds out that there's a nuclear bomb in the picture that was stolen from the Russians. So this is all, like, in the first, like, 3 or 4 chapters. We're immediately thrust into this massive thing.
Amazing.
He lets the German guy go because he didn't have a shot and it wasn't in his orders, and then he doesn't do anything about the nuclear bomb, so he gets chewed out by his boss, and the whole rest of the story is him trying to find the German guy with the threat of the nuclear bomb kind of in the background. But the reason I love this story, you have that whole opening sequence, which is fire, but one of my favorite things is stuff that's set kind of in contemporary times but involves some sort of swordplay as well as pistols and knives. I love, my 2 favorite things in fiction are gunslinging and swashbuckling. And you got to have a sword to swashbuckle. So this book imparts both of those in an absolutely phenomenal way. And it is a great start to the Matt Helm series if you wanted to jump right in. Or it's a great continuation. And you're going to love the character. He's ruthless, dude. He's such a good character.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited to get that. I want to read that one really bad, the way you explained that. Particularly like the swordplay thing. It's interesting. It's like one of those things that I just hadn't thought too much about, but I'm reading Count of Monte Cristo right now, and now I've got that thought in my head where I'm like, I've never read a sweet sword fight. What's up with that? And I want that. Give me that. So this sounds like the answer to all of my desires here. That's awesome. And that's cool. It's interesting that you have that take of liking more contemporary set stories too, because your Adventures of Wanderers is contemporary, right? I mean, it is. That's pretty cool.
I think the freedom that a contemporary world gives you is awesome. Like the ability to jet set anywhere in the whole entire world like that, super cool. Tough part is making crazy gunfights and things like that happen without police immediately showing up.
Oh yeah, dude. Vipers, if it was in the real world, just like absolutely arrest this guy immediately. It's not gonna happen.
The feds immediately show up. Whole party's
just a helicopter, whoosh, 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 whoosh. You're done.
I will say, if you have the chance to listen to the audiobooks for the Matt Helm series, the reader is phenomenal. I think his name is Stefan Radnicki, and he does such a good job reading them. There's rumors, and there have been rumors for years that they're going to make a Matt Helm series with Bradley Cooper playing him, which would be absolutely awesome. But it's going to be very hard for Bradley Cooper to take the place of Stefan Radnicki because he does the character superbly. It's awesome. It's so good.
That's fantastic. Well, you got me hyped. You gave me another book I had to buy. That's for sure.
All right, let's hear number 4 for you, dude. I'm excited.
All right, number 4 for me. I don't actually have on me because this is what I was saying. It's in my parents' house in Arizona, and it's Hondo by Louis L'Amour. I have one taking its place over on the dry side. Also, a great Louis L'Amour. As we said, can't go wrong with Louis L'Amour. Pick up any. But Hondo is one of the very first, not the first, but one of the very first ones I read. And so kind of similar vein to what you're saying, where it's almost formative is the word, where I found that book at directly the right time for me. Because Hondo it's a father effect book to me. Like it's about what a man is meant to be within a nuclear family, and how a woman and a man and working together to raise a family is the best case scenario, because a mother brings something unique that a man cannot, and a man brings something unique that a woman cannot, and how they come together to make the home and raise a child. That's what Hondo was for me, because I picked it up right when I'd found out my wife was pregnant with our first kid. So like all those lessons were jumping off the page to me, and just like, probably they're so much more at the forefront than they are to a lot of other readers. But to me, like, it's the story of Hondo. He comes into this Apache country, and this woman has been left by her husband, and Hondo's like, that doesn't sit right with me. Why would a man leave her kid, or why would a husband leave his wife and his son in Apache country? So he kind of like takes the surrogate father role and steps in. And there's so, again, with the highlights and the underlines and the life lessons, there was so much I took from that that sticks with me and means so much to me. Have you read Hondo?
I think I saw the John Wayne movie.
Okay.
And I think I may have read it, but if I did, it was a long time ago, and I have very vague memories of it. But
Yeah,
I'm going to have
to
to now.
Yeah, pick it back up. It's really good. It's kind of what we talked about last week a little bit too, with the concept of the tested man versus the untested man, proven man. There's so many great things in there about how what he brings to the table from having faced. There's this line, I wish I could remember it perfectly, and one day I will, but it's like something about Hondo had tested himself against the hard land of his living, the men of that land, and its wilderness. And so and this was like her explaining how he was proven and unshakable, and she trusted him, even though he never said a word about himself. And that stuff really stuck out to me, and I really looked into it and kind of maybe even read into it. But what I got from that was, you have to test yourself against your land, looking around at your life and saying, taking stock of where you're at, and know that you got there because of the choices you made for a lot of the part, right? I mean, we can't control some things. I didn't ask for my heart condition, but a lot of the things in our life are in our control, and we have to make what we can with our circumstances. And then the men of that land, we have to realize, who we're surrounding ourselves with. Are we bringing our friends up, and are our friends bringing us up? Are we in these strong relationships? Are we in the right circles? I always go back to a Rocky speech from the first movie with little Marie, where he says you hang out with yo-yo people, you get yo-yo friends. It's like who you surround yourself with is gonna build the man you are too. And that the wilderness goes to the concept that is in King Arthur's story, where each man had to look at the part of the forest that was darkest to him. And there's some deep insecurity, there's something that is boiling inside of you, inside of each man, that needs to be taken care of. And if you can do the hard work, the hard digging, and face that abyss and look into it and figure that out, you'll come out the other side being a much steadier individual. But if not, that's always going to be ready to set you off, ready to make things boil over and be what they don't need to be. And so those three things just continue to cycle through my head as my wife went through the pregnancy and my son was coming. I was like, I want to be this man that is actually stable and helpful to the family, and so, rather than the example in the one who left them in Apache country, And so that book means a lot to me on a personal level too. I read it at the right time.
Dude, that's That's a heck of a pitch. I feel like I need to read this book immediately. I don't know how I've been a father without it.
The ultimate guide to parenting by Louis L'Amour.
Dude, that sounds really awesome. I'm really excited to read that.
Yeah, check that out. You're a father, so I think it'll hit you in that way too. Especially if you're looking for it and you're primed for it.
Dude, that was great. I love that. I think maybe the best part about this whole entire thing is some of these stories are just, I don't know, they're not like the most highbrow fiction, right? But they hit you. You literally just had an awesome whole like speech right there about what it is to be a man, and that's why I'm here, because reading stuff like this makes us strive to be better men and better fathers. So very cool. I can't wait to read Hondo.
And you actually teased the next one and primed me pretty well for once. It's back to number 3. Is I want to go into that more. That idea of this is not considered highbrow literature or anything, but I want to touch on that in the next one. But for now, let's hear what yours is. I'm pumped up. What do we got?
It's a good thing we're talking about not highbrow, because this is lowbrow. I think this book is one of the craziest books that I've ever read, and everything that happens. It's called Stripped for Murder by Richard S. Prather, or Prather. I'm not sure how you say it. Doesn't matter. It's spelled Prather. Find this book and read it. It is hilarious and it is phenomenal. So it's the 11th book of the Shell Scott mystery series. Once again, another character that's, you're with him for 11 books before you get here. So you can start at the beginning or you can jump right into Stripped for Murder, because it is phenomenal. I don't want to spoil it because it's just so good. It catches you off guard so well from the get-go. Basically, Shell Scott is this tough-as-nails private investigator in Los Angeles, and he gets some absolutely crazy cases with all sorts of crazy women, and it's done very tastefully. There's nothing too crazy that happens, but this one just is like knocks your socks off from the get-go. So he starts out going to a party, and there's a bunch of mobsters at the party. And there's this older woman who is like still in incredible shape, still very pretty, and she wants to hire him to figure out something that's going on with one of her daughters, because her daughter married a guy who's pretty suspicious. And so that's kind of like the inciting thing that happens. But then he gets contacted by her daughter, and he ends up going out to meet her, and he finds out that she actually has 2 daughters, and this is a different one, and she lives at a nudist colony. and I'll stop right there. Now, I know what you're thinking. You got to hear me out. This seems like an absolutely crazy thing that's going to happen. Like, the story does not seem like it could ever be good or high quality or make any sense. But there are some of the most ridiculous sequences that have ever happened in fiction history in this book. But the writer is so phenomenal at what he does that you don't for a single second doubt that it could happen in reality.
That's cool.
My wife does not usually love listening to the audiobooks that I listen to, or when she has dyslexia, so it's hard to get her to read anything that I wanted to read. But we were on a trip on vacation last year, and I made her listen to this book. Good husband alert right here. And she had an absolute blast, dude. We were both like laughing out loud for long periods of time listening to this book in the car ride, because it is so good. And then the mystery is phenomenal, and it gives you enough that you can kind of figure it out. It's just exceptional. I can't recommend Shell Scott enough, because those books are great. It's like I was saying last week when I was talking about how I try to write my character so that you kind of have like the internal monologue, and he's having a good time because he loves his job, but like at the same time he just killed 3 or 4 people and he's just witnessed a grisly murder. Like, the stakes do not lose their height and their like scariness because he's laughing and having a fun time and because goofy things are happening. It almost makes like the juxtaposition almost makes it even more jarring when like crazy violence happens. So that's awesome. That's all I got to say about Stripped for Murder.
Well, where is Bradley Cooper for this, Stripped for Murder movie?
I don't know. Come on, Bradley.
Bradley, get on this. I want to see these sequences.
Yeah, it's a fun one. What's
Awesome.
up?
I'll have to add that. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes, there's different moods. There's different times that readers want to read different things. There's got to be. We can't forget to have fun. We can't forget story and just having a good time. When you were playing with your friends as a kid, and in the woods, and you're having your own adventures, no one was sitting there going like, "Well, what's the theme? What are we trying to learn here?" That comes later. That's got its time and place. But a story that is just balls to the walls, action and fun, it has its place, and don't look down on it. Don't turn your nose up to it. It's good. It's that stuff. Especially as dudes, right? We're here with the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. Like, it's just exhilarating. It's just fun. It just unlocks a little part of you, that kid that never dies, the kid that you shouldn't let die, by picking these books up. And you kind of stoke that excitement and that fire, that same boyish instinct that went out in the woods and said, let's be swashbucklers.
Yeah, dude. I think that's something too that's been missing a lot from. I don't think a lot of people read anymore because I don't think they realize that it can be fun. Like, my brother he reads sometimes, but he's not a huge reader, and he read this book and he's read like the next 5 of them because he's enjoyed them so much. Because, like I said, like you were just saying, they're fun. Like, reading is obviously you learn from reading, but it's also entertainment. It's like a good popcorn movie. So, with that in mind, what's number 3 for you?
All right, so number 3 for me is contemporary. This is like maybe the newest book on the list, Bull Mountain by Brian Panowich, which came out in 2015. If the book and how it looks is any indication, this is like one of the most read through and like torn up book, highlighted and scribbled in book that I own probably, other than the Bible. But this thing is like beaten down because of how much I love it and how much I just juice out of every page. I can't tell you how much I love this book. And before I get into kind of the pitch on why, I need to say that the greatest moment in my writing career so far has been Brian Panowich gave a positive review and a blurb for Vipers and Red Rocks, and that was absurd to me. Like, this guy, like I fell in love with his book. It unlocked something in me that was like, oh, stories can go this way, like you can do this with narrative. And that guy gave me a blurb and a positive review. So that was like literally the most mind-blowing moment of my writing career so far. But Bull Mountain, we're going back to switching gears now to the highbrow. This is full-on literature. Like, this is, I think when I found this, it was in the fiction section. Since then, it's been moved to the thrillers because he has this, there's a sequel to this and a third one. He has a 4th book out that are all kind of in the same universe. Think like MCU almost. Like, there's different characters and some of them cross over at different times. But this is just literature. But so you have it's poetic, it's Shakespearean, it's epic, it's got everything that literature has that goes so that you can go so deep in the well with, where I can read a paragraph and just think about it like it's a poem and really go deep with it. But it's written like a thriller, and it's got the same twists and turns and excitement and revelations, and so it's an absolute page turner. My number 1 on the list is probably the only book I've ever turned pages faster on, because I could not put this thing down, especially after you get a certain revelation. This thing is just story-wise incredible, and then writing-wise, I think unmatched. I think the prose in this, the writing style, and the literary kind of meat of this one is better than anything else on this list that I have to offer. This thing is near perfect, in my opinion. I love this book. And to give you guys the pitch on the plot, it's, I think it's considered like the redneck Godfather. It's these guys up in Georgia, this family, and one of the brothers is the sheriff, and one of the brothers is still running this outlaw crew. And I won't say any more than that. You got to read the book, and within the first couple pages, you'll be hooked. There was a certain line that happens on like page 2 or 3, and after that line, I was just, okay, I'm completely sold. I went and grabbed my pen and my highlighter, and I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm gonna take some notes here. That is the one. That is number 3.
That's
Is that number 3?
heck of a pitch, dude. Isn't that partially why one of your books is named Retaliation Mountain?
Yeah, the mountain from Retaliation Mountain comes from Bull Mountain because I wanted to give a nod to him. Because those books, the first one, Bull Mountain, and the second one, Like Lions, those books just changed something in me. I think it's because I think in my mind as a younger individual, pre-reading that book, I kind of had that opinion that a lot of people do have, where it's like, oh, thrillers, oh, men's adventure fiction, like, I like it, but it's a guilty pleasure. There's nothing to get out of this genre. There's nothing, because I hadn't discovered Louis L'Amour yet, but I didn't know there was anything to get out of the genre other than it's a summer blockbuster. I saw them all as Transformers in my mind, right? I was like, oh, that's Transformers. That's just fun action on the screen, cool. And then I read Bull Mountain, and I was like, wait a second, this genre, I just overlooked this entire genre my entire life. Thrillers and men's adventure fiction actually has a lot to say about what it means to be a man and a person, and the themes of identity and loyalty and family in Bull Mountain made me just question and contemplate so much that it opened up a whole new world to me. And I started, I think that's really where the love of men's adventure fiction started for me, was seeing this masculine, energetic action story give me as much as literature. Because before, I was trying to chase that feeling with, the books that you're told to read that are classics, and it's like, it's okay, it's pretty good, but it was missing that, where's the fun story? Where's the thing that sucks me in and enlivens that young boy inside me who's like, I want some action, I want some fun. And to see the worlds collide in Bull Mountain started us all for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like I'll read that and not feel guilty, like you said. I'm excited, dude. I have not read that, but that's the whole reason I wanted this list, was to find more information on what you suggest, because I want to read it.
And this is what I love, is I haven't really read any of yours either, so we're interlocking right now. We're about to find some good stuff right now. We're about to overlap and read some great stuff.
Yeah, dude, that sounds like an incredible book, and I'm excited to check it out. I'm also excited to hear your top two, but I guess we're going to have to wait till next week to figure that out, which I'm very excited for. So check out next week, because you'll hear my 2 favorite books and Luke's 2 favorite books. So it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. And be sure to put your guys', you can put top 5, or if you want to wait and do what we're doing, do the first 3 and then do the next 2 next week.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear them. I know we want book recommendations. This is not just all about us talking about what we like. We want to build this community. We want to hear what you guys like. We want to have conversations about why you love the books you love. This is supposed to be a fun community, so let's hear what you guys got too.
Right, we already got some pretty good recommendations from each other.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I want my book list to be filled. So we're getting there.
I don't want it to be too long.
Yeah, man. Cool.
So now it's piece of gear, right? We're gonna throw it before we end things. We always try to, for now, give you guys a nice piece of men's adventure fiction gear to take out in the real world, because we started this whole thing out talking about being men of action, living the adventure, not just reading about it. So this week, my piece of gear is going to be one of these portable hammocks that you can just kind of like strap up, loop it around your belt, take it wherever you're going on a hike, throw it in your car. There's nothing quite like reading in a hammock, talking in a hammock, smoking a pipe in a hammock, smoking a cigar in a hammock. It makes things better. Just being in a hammock is relaxing. It's nice. You're in nature. You're amongst some trees. You can really set yourself in the right mood for deep philosophical talks, reading, whatever you're up to. Get a hammock.
Yeah, dude. Hammock is clutch. Funny story about, I'm a fairly, I like to go camping every so often. Mm-hmm. And for a while I was going on a camping trip by myself quarterly, every 3 or so months in a year. Yeah. And one time I went on a trip, set up my hammock, cooked myself some food, went to sleep, had planned on going on a hike in the morning, but I slept so dang good in the hammock. I slept for 14 hours straight, dude.
Dang.
14 hours. I woke up, ate some more food, and drove back home. That was the camping
Fantastic,
trip.
Yeah. Get a hammock to cure your insomnia.
You heard it here first on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast.
Beautiful.
Mine, I'm going to go with a sturdy fixed blade knife would be my suggestion. Awesome. These are awesome. You can get them anywhere really. Like, always cool to get them at like a Cabela's or some sort of like hardware store, or if you ever find like a general store, there's a lot of them down south. They're sick. They just got like a bunch of crazy stuff. Super useful for everyday things like opening boxes and stuff like that, or maybe fighting bad guys if you have to. You never know what can happen in a day. But also very useful for any sort of like camping or survivalist stuff that you do. A really cool guy that I knew from my trips to Maine with my family was actually a knife forger, and he claimed to be related to Jim Bowie. But he gave us these really cool lessons about, like, of course I have a knife from him, and he makes really sturdy knives. So he one time was like, if you ever stuck in the woods and you need to get firewood but you can't split trees because you don't have an axe, and you have a log and you need to split it down to kindling, he said, like, stick the knife blade, you stick the knife into the piece of wood, and then you get another stick and you just hit the knife and it'll split the piece of wood for you. That's super useful stuff. So there you go. Fun little survival tip.
That actually just happened last weekend. We were on a family trip, and my dad was like, the store near town did not have an axe. And I was like, well, who has a fixed blade right here? And then I knew that trick of,
yeah, man.
I was like, we could just hit it with it if we need to. So that it works, and that's a great piece of survival tip. So thank you for that, and thank you for again having this conversation with me. This is an absolute pleasure. I mean, this is just making my night. I always look forward to this, and I appreciate you for being here, and I appreciate all you guys who are watching and talking with us and continuing to grow this men's adventure fiction community. Anything else you want to leave before we head out?
I think you've covered it. It's just so good to be talking about men's adventure fiction, talking about what it is to be a man and how it all kind of comes together. So I'm excited for more from you and from people watching. Keep commenting, keep telling us what you think. Tell us what you want to see in future episodes, because we've got a fairly blank slate we're working with here. We've got our ideas, but we know that, we're doing this to talk about this topic in this genre. So if you have something that's passionate to you about this and you want us to talk about it, definitely shoot us a message. And make sure to follow us on Instagram. And like Luke was saying earlier, follow the other people that are commenting on Instagram. This can be a self-sustaining thing, because it seems like there's a lot of people that are interested in this kind of revival of men's adventure fiction. So don't be afraid to make friends, and don't be afraid to reach out, because I know Luke is super available. That's why I'm friends with him. That's why we're here right now. And I am also,
we like this.
I'm ready to talk anytime. So just shoot us a message.
Awesome. All right, guys, we will see you next time with the top 2. Take care.